Welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we are finally working on something fun on Project Black Pearl. We're going to do our first performance modification that wasn't already done to the car that we had to take apart doing all of the litany of maintenance. If you haven't seen those videos, take a look at my playlist. We've covered a lot of things on this car, but today we're going to let it breathe just a little bit easier. And it's all going to start with this throttle body out of an N62 V8. This is the 750 and the 550 from 2008 to 2010, I believe. I'll have part numbers to all of this down below so you can find them on Turner Motorsports or FCP Euro or wherever you can find the best prices to these things. What we have is a larger throttle body to fit on our M60 intake manifold. And this one is an 84mm throttle body if you get the right part number. It does have a different connector, so we're going to be using an adapter harness. You can make your own harness. I chose in this case to go ahead and buy it because the cost of the harness versus the cost of trying to buy all the pins was kind of negligible. Now, if you find one of these for really cheap at a junkyard, cut off the harness at the junkyard and you'll be set. You just have to wire it in. Coming into the throttle body, we have a Turner 4-inch intake tube because we have stepped up to a larger inlet. We're going to try to get more air through. Moving down the line, we've got the Turner 4-inch mass airflow housing, which means that we also want to suck more air into that guy. And for that, I found the old aluminum Dinan intake on eBay. And I picked this up for a pretty decent price. I'll throw that up here on the screen. I did wind up buying a new filter for it. Dinan recommends replacing these filters every 30,000 miles, and the filter that it came with was not in the best shape, but not terrible. It's got some stuff growing in it, and it's just overall a little bit damaged, and I didn't want to start with a damaged filter. The inside of this tube is a little dirty as well, as you can see on my fingers. So we're going to also clean out the inside here before it goes on the car. To join these two up, normally you'd have a 4-inch to 3.5 reducer for the factory intake track, but I picked up a 4-inch hump coupling here so that there's a little bit of give. To get this all on the car, we are going to have to take apart a fair amount, nothing all that difficult. And if you're not sure what car I'm talking about, because maybe this is the first time you've seen my channel, well, let me show you. So now that we've got that out of the way, you might be asking yourself, why would you even put an intake on this motor in the first place? Well, that's really simple. I don't leave anything stock. If you've seen any of my other vehicles or my other videos, whether it was my F350, my M5, I touch everything. I have to. It's what I do. Plus, I really like the sound of that whoop as this engine is trying to suck in the air. And the factory airbox is very limiting on the sound. This was an executive's car as it was way back in the day. They didn't want to hear any of that noise. I don't even have the top intake cover on there because I want to hear all the glorious noise from this dual overhead cam V8. Up front, this really isn't all that much work to take apart. We're going to start at the throttle body, and then on the bottom of the throttle body we have our little vacuum connector here. If you squeeze the tab, since mine's missing the disconnect tab, you can pull it apart. And then down on the bottom, you've got your vacuum hose to your fuel pressure regulator. On this side, we've got our mass airflow sensor that we're going to be pulling out with these safety torques. And then we've got the top of our intake box. Over here, we have a 10mm. And then down underneath, right there, you have another 10mm that would be bolted to a bracket on the silencer underneath. I currently don't have that in there because when I was doing the timing guides, I left that bracket out intentionally because I was going to be doing this at a later date. And I knew that was coming. you're probably still going to have that bolt down there. It's easier to pop the top half of our intake tract off as one piece than it is to try to get the whole bottom out with it. So popping these clips off makes it much easier to come up and out, and then disconnect from our throttle body on this side, gently around our hoses. Then our lower box, depending on how many times your car has been worked on, you may have 2 hose clamps down here holding it in place. Again, I left those out when I was going back together, knowing that all this was coming apart in the future. Here's where those 2 hose clamps would be, right here, holding onto there. Also make note that you have 2 rubber bushings that you don't want to lose in case this ever goes back in the car. Now we're almost fully disassembled. All we have left on this side is our throttle body, which has 4 10mm bolts and 1 connector. Connector pops right off, a little bit of torque, and this guy just slides right out the top. Now, some of the more astute observers are going to notice the throttle plate here is smaller than the new throttle body. That is true. Mine, however, I already sanded out the inside to match the new diameter of my new throttle body when I was doing timing guides and all that work. You could buy a second spacer or throttle plate adapter like this one. This one has actually been 3D printed. We did this here at the house with a cone shape to it to allow more airflow, but we omitted the idea of our purge valve line. So we have to re-engineer this. We got the file off of Makerspace, I think. I'm not sure. I'll share the file down below as well. So if you're good with CAD, or better than we are, we're not very good, you could modify this to fit your application. To get the bumper off, you don't have to pull the wheels, but it does make it easier. Now this is one tool that does make things a little easier with these wheels so they don't fall off. This is just a bolt that I cut down so that I could use it as a stud, so that my wheels not going to fall off. Now, did it rotate? Yeah, that was kind of dumb of me, but it didn't fall on my feet. Calipers sure look good with all that powder coat on them. Take a look at that video down below in my playlist. With our wheels off, and before we pull our splash panels, we'll go ahead and pull our central panel off. Get this guy out of the way. And if you're looking for the pork chops or these splash panels, I found mine on carparts.com. They are very cheaply made, but they're also cheap to buy. I think they were like $15. I'll put it up here, the link, so you can find them. The problem that I ran into on like the 3rd test drive already, you can see this one's damaged, was that this inside screw here usually has that little metal clip that attaches to the bumper. And I say usually because oftentimes those clips get ripped off and people don't replace them. Well, I have a stock of those clips from my dealership days and I replaced mine. The problem was that that little metal clip had such poor engagement, this little metal clip, it had such poor engagement to the bumper that this lower air dam caught and pulled it back into my wheel, and of course it ripped off. So I asked my son to make me something that I could mount here because I actually don't know how to use the 3D printer or CAD, and he's learning how at 15, which is pretty cool. So I came up with the design, and then he created this little triangle piece in CAD, and then that screws to the bumper, so it's solid, it's not going anywhere. And then we put a metal retainer clip for the screw on that, mount it to the bottom, and now we can solidly mount our splash panels without fear of them slipping off of the inside. Now my bumper is missing the tab here on the inside, so we need to figure out the dimensions for another one of these that will be round to fit the contour of the bumper, and then we'll make one for here as well. For now, I'm just using a tab and hoping for the best of luck. Now our bumper mounting bolts are somewhere in this region, which means we have to pull this trim off here. Got 2 little push rivet clips here, and then it pops off to the front. And if you've replaced any number of fog lights, you've had to take those off in the past. And then here's our T50 bolt for both sides. Before we do that, we want to go ahead and unplug our fog lights. And if you had PDC or headlight washers, you'd want to unplug those as well. Not something I need to worry about because I don't have them. We've got a couple of mounts here that are mounting our fog light ducts. and it looks like mine are damaged on the bottom, so I only have to take the top ones off. And then on the bumper itself, we have an alignment guide on this side, the same on the other side. And then the bottom of the headlights might get a little bit jammed up on the bumper seal here. So you just gotta work your way under the headlights to get that off, and around the inner fender liner, because it will also get a little stuck on the corners. So I like to try to loosen up one side at a time, and then come to the middle to get it the rest of the way off. There go my brake ducts. You can see it comes off complete with the inner crash bar. That's the word I'm looking for. Now, this is our fresh air duct to the stock intake. On the M5, there's one here and one here, and it draws air from this pressurized compartment here on the bottom of our radiator inlet. So air is being forced in here and up, and then it's pulling fresh air there. So it is a fresh cold air duct, but it also creates a minor restriction. And we've got 3 bolts to get that out. One of them is a conventional machine thread, and the other 2 are plastic or what look like wood thread. Now, we may have to pull the headlight to get this guy out. To get our headlight out, we got to make sure to get our connectors off. So we have our xenon module here. Push the little tab, pull up. We've got our halos, same thing, push tab, and then down. We've got our headlight adjustment motor, and then we've got high beams, and in the corner over here is where our turn signal is. We'll get that as we're pulling out. For the high beams, I need a little hook tool. You can get under the little ears, apply a little pressure while you're pulling up, and it'll come right out. Now we've got 4 8mm. There's one way down here and one over here. These are different top to bottom. These top ones have little serrations in the washers to help them lock in for adjustment. The bottom ones are smooth, and they have a T20 in the head as well. For this inside one, so we don't drop it down in the engine bay, I like to send a magnet down there, try to grab it. Now we can slide our headlight forward and out. The corner over here is going to have a piece of trim that catches right there, but it'll slide out. Once we pull it forward a little bit, it makes getting to this turn signal no problem. And now our duct comes off, no problem. Right here, this is where that hose clamp would have been, and our other one up here on the top. So normally when you get the bumper off, you're going to have your secondary air pump mounted right here in the corner. Mine's conveniently off and been sent out for rebuilding.
EPA, that's what's happening, it's getting rebuilt.
So for now, I don't have to deal with a secondary air. If yours is still installed, I'll post up a link to the Dinan instructions on how you modify the pump by flipping it over and stuffing it further into the corner and only using these 2 side mounts to mount it. Now, in my case, again, I'm not worried about that because I'll have to deal with that later. What we need to deal with is getting this mounting bracket to line up right here. And our ductwork plumbs up and through. And you can see this metal bracket is clearly in the way. So what I'm going to do is I pulled my harness up here out of the way. I'm going to cut carefully along the side of my desiccant dryer here and across in front of these 2 mounting tabs, because this is where the secondary air pump would mount later. And then our filter is going to sit down right here. Here is our opening, all trimmed up. I smoothed out this lower section a little bit to bring it back. I brought all of this nice and smooth. And now we need to make sure that we can bolt up to the corner here and run our duct up and through there. So because I bought this used, it didn't come with any hardware. And the bolt that would go here normally is way too long. So I dug through my stack of bolts that I pulled off of a car at the junkyard, and I found one that I think is going to work. Carefully up through there. And we're just going to put this in loose for now. Something doesn't seem quite right about this. Like maybe it got bent in whatever accident it was in. It's definitely got some damage to it, but it's all workable. And to clarify things, I have no idea if all of these parts are going to work together. I couldn't find anybody else that had done it just like this online. So we're gonna find this out together, and I'm hoping that it is all gonna work together. Let's go ahead and start with the throttle body. We need our adapter harness, which we're gonna go ahead and throw on our throttle body. That's a nice tight fit. Probably gonna lubricate the end of this guy here with a little bit of dielectric grease just to make sure that it seats into that rubber gasket easier. On the back side, it comes with a throttle body gasket. And on the front side, since we're running the 4-inch duct, we don't need the spacer, but we will need the bolts. Just gonna take a little bit of that dielectric grease, run it around the outside, and a little bit around the inside. That should allow the rubber boot inside there to slip on a little easier. Yep, just like that. Torquing this down to 10 Newton meters. Not sure if that's the torque or not, that's just what I'm torquing it to. These are M6 bolts. Clips in nicely. About just like that. Okay, now we need our 4-inch duct. And on this guy, see, I want to put my hose clamp on this side. We need to adapt these fittings here to fit our vacuum line and this line. We're going to put a little bit of dish soap in here because the dish soap will evaporate out and leave a nice sticky surface. That worked perfect. Looks like it's on all the way around. Now, I'm already looking at this thinking, I'm not sure how that 4-inch MAF is going to fit in here. Yeah, that's going to be really tight. Well, I really didn't want to have to cut apart this new Turner 4-inch MAF, but I'm not using their airbox, so what I did was I cut that bracket off, and then I started playing with it. I found out I did have to wind up cutting quite a bit off of this guy. Alright, so I fiddled around with the end of this tube. I'm going to have to sand this a little bit more. The end of this one is a little shorter. Everything here is clamped in. Let's try this again. I think this one's going to be the one that fits. Oh yeah. That looks like it's going to fit nicely now. I can actually get the screw in down here. Okay, and there's actually a little bit of room right there. Okay. So I took off a little bit more than I probably needed to. And because I'm not using my big clamp, or my big boot, this one kind of looks funny, but it'll work. I think it'll seal up right there pretty nicely. It'll at least give me a good tight connection. Nice. All right. Let's get that mass airflow sensor out of the stock housing. And it's been 2 days. Well, technically it's 2 days later. It hasn't been 2 days. See, I went over to my toolbox and I thought, let me get out a safety Torx. So I did. Those have 6 points. Turns out this mass airflow housing has 5-point safety Torx on it. Look at that guy. That's a 5-point. That's a funny ass shape. So that meant that I ordered a new tool, and with Prime, here it is a day and a half later or 2 days later. So now with our 5-point star safety Torx, we can go ahead and remove this. This is a T25 IPR bit. And yes, I could have taken these out with a pair of vice grips, or I could have cut a flat notch in these. But I want to maintain the integrity of these bolts so that I can put them back in the housing. That way in the future, should I need to put this car back to stock for any reason, even if it were a diagnostic reason, then I can. So this should pop straight out. Got a little seal. This doesn't look dirty at all. Now we'll put these guys back in for later. Sometimes that happens. You know, I am a tool collector after all. Take a look at my shirt down below. I work on a lot of stuff. I could have swore when I was doing my mass airflow on my CTSVs back in the day that I had this bit, but I can't seem to find it anywhere. And I don't recall exactly a 5-point. But now I've got a nice little kit. It's pretty inexpensive. Link down below. It's pretty nice. I mean, it goes from number 8 to 60, so if I need a special 5-point T60 for whatever, I have it now. Make sure when you go to install your air filter that you install it with the hose clamp towards the brake assembly, because if you install it this way where it's nice and easy with the bumper off, when you need to take this off to replace, clean, or do whatever, it's going to be harder to do it with the bumper on. We want to be able to access this by just pulling the splash panel out. So we're going to tighten it with the hose clamp towards the brake assembly like this. And then double check that it's not going to slide off. Last thing you want is for this thing to be sucking just straight dirty air from the bottom down here. You could also throw a water sock on here if you have any concerns about water. I've used those on other vehicles successfully, even when I was living in Washington State and it rained all the time. Well, here's complication number 265. The mass air meter needs to have air coming across it this way, but they cut the tube too small. The bung here for the mass air fits, but it doesn't want to go down. If I turn it sideways, it'll go down and in, but it will not rotate without undue pressure on the side of the mass air meter here. And I really don't want to sand this. I'd much rather put a little buffing wheel on there. But that means I got to take it back apart. Damn it. Not entirely sure what hardware was supposed to go here, or if the kit came with the hardware. I can't find it anywhere. So I had to dig through my assortment of bolts to find an M4 or 5, whatever this is. I think it's an M5 that fits in there. But I found one, thankfully. I guess we'll start it now and see if the throttle works. One thing to keep in mind, you are going to want to clear adaptations before you drive the car. It is going to be pulling more air in, period, right? Which means it's going to stand the chance of running leaner, especially before you have a tune. You can drive it, you can run it. I just wouldn't get on it really hard because, again, it stands the chance of running lean. Let the car adapt to how much air is coming in, and before you go romping super hard on it, make sure that you don't have any lean running faults. Well, it was running like some real dog do for a little while. It even stalled a couple of times. All that with clearing adaptation values. So yeah, a tune is definitely going to be necessary. Right now it's running okay. It was surging and going all over the place though, so I'm going to let it warm all the way up and then see how the throttle reacts. Then I might let it cool down too and then start it back up and see what happens. But hoo-wee, it wasn't setting any faults, but it was very unhappy. So I've started and run the car a couple of times. Now it's starting up pretty good, albeit it's a little bit longer crank than I would like, but I think it's going to have to, you know, adapt a little bit. So at this point, I'm just going to get out and put some nice steady mileage on the car. Listen for awkward noises or the engine to do anything weird. Got my little scanner here with me, so should anything go super wonky, I'll have something to check. Throttle does feel a bit more touchy than it did before. You know, taking off from the driveway there was a little bit bumpy, like, you know, a new clutch driver. Like, I think the best way that I can explain the way that the throttle feels is it feels more sensitive. In my M5, it has the sport button, and when you push the sport button, the throttle input level changes. And when you touch the throttle a little bit, it gives you more than it does without sport. That's how it feels. On my F350, I put a Banks pedal monster on it, and it was adjustable for the pedal feel, and that's what that did. It changed it so if I put 5% in, it was actually giving it 10 or 15 or 20%, which made it feel more sporty, more robust. That's how this feels. It feels like the throttle input that I'm giving it is giving it more gas than it was before, which makes sense. If there's more air going in, then it's going to accelerate harder. Oh yeah, that's definitely a different noise than it was making before, and a little bit peppier than it was before by quite a bit. I mean, the seat of the pants, that's like 10 horsepower, 20 horsepower, even though I know reality it's nowhere near that. We're probably talking like 3 or 4, but the feel, oftentimes when you're modifying a car, the feel is more important than the actual outcome. I'm not street racing. I have a race car that I take to the racetrack. I mean, let's keep things civil. but it feels cooler. It feels like it's more fun. It's peppy, snappier, a lot more like my wife's twin turbo or twin scroll turbo X5. It's peppy, it's snappy. You get on it and it wants to go. So how did the rest of the test drive go? Well, I drove the car home. That's a bonus. I didn't have to have it towed. Bonus number 2. Negative. About 20 miles into my test drive, I hooked up the scanner at a park, decided to stop, go to the bathroom, and chill for a little bit. And I checked the adaptation values. The values for bank 1 and bank 2 on the multiplicative scale, blah, I don't know why that word is hard to say, was completely maxed out at 25%. What that means is the car is getting too much air. It thinks that potentially there's a vacuum leak, and it's trying to add fuel, all of the fuel. 25% is maxed out. Well, then at mile 25, the check engine light turned on for those faults. I knew it was coming, so I wasn't exactly surprised. I was really hoping that it could adapt and work, but this is a clear sign that the intake, the MAF, the duct, the throttle body, the M60 intake, all of these things combined is just too much for the ECU. I do need to get it tuned. I'm probably gonna get it tuned with DUD MD out of Utah. I had my M5 dyno tuned in Renton, Washington at 22 RPD. They did an amazing job. That car put 389 to the tires. But I'm not looking to go quite that far with the 540. DUDMD makes a really good tune from everything that I've read online and all of the reviews and other people that have used it. So I'm gonna go that route. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do a flash or if I'm gonna mail in my DME because I don't have a Windows computer. I run a Mac with Boot Camp to run Windows software and whatnot. So I'm waiting to hear back from them on that. So that was that. How does it sound? Oh, it sounds good. Listen to this. It is noticeable inside the car only when you get above about 3,000 RPM. You can hear it build that whoop as it starts to suck in all that air. I did modify the lower bumper. The little grill on the driver's side is completely open. On the passenger side was closed off to the duct area or whatever that area is called behind the splash panel. So I opened up the top area so that I could get just a little bit more air in there without maybe funneling a ton of water and any possibility like that. It sounds great. I'm really impressed with how it all came together, even though it didn't come together exactly as planned. But the plan was up in the air this whole time. I didn't know if it was gonna work or not. So let's finish up here. Originally, my goal for this was to just find a Dinan intake tube on eBay or maybe even buy the new Dinan intake. But then I got to researching and I found the 4-inch tube from Turner Motorsport, the 4-inch MAF, and then the throttle body upgrade, and I thought all of this would be a great pairing for the M60 intake. So I added those here to my list: Dinan intake, MAF, throttle body, and boot. I also wound up spending quite a bit more money than I wanted to because I added everything in there. The Turner intake tube, the 4-inch tube, and the 4-inch MAF that had to be modified quite a bit was $185.29. The adapter harness, $54.59. The Dinan tube I got on eBay with the junk filter for $215. So I bought a new air filter for $35.99. The throttle body was $208.99. And when I add in tax and shipping, it brings my total up to $761.09. That's a grand total of $9,050.71. Nobody said owning a BMW was cheap. A lot of people said it's not very smart.
They're both right.
I really appreciate you watching. Stay tuned for next episode when we get, I think, the tune on the car, or maybe the steering wheel, or maybe the complete M Sport headliner, or maybe I'm going to drop the sunroof out and do a complete rebuild on that. I'm not really sure what's coming next. Funds will help to determine that. Again, I really appreciate you guys. Take a look at my merch stuff down below. Like, subscribe, comment, do all those fun things. I'll see you right here in the garage in the next video.